When screaming comes with grabbing, taking toys, pushing, and pulling on you to get what they want, this is the moment to pause. Because what might look like a bad attitude or even manipulation is actually something else entirely. So if you've been told when your toddler screams to just ignore it, wait it out, or set a firm limit and move on, but it hasn't worked and it's made things worse for your toddler, and you mentally feel you can't hold it all together and do all those things, while your other child is now crying and being sidelined, I want to offer you a very different lens, one that helps your child and helps you breathe again. Today, I want to shift how you understand screaming so you can respond in a way that actually helps, not just in the moment, but long term. So we're going to go over a few different sections. Part 1, why screaming is not a character trait. Part 2, why screaming isn't manipulation. Part 3, why screaming often comes with grabbing. Part 4, how screaming shows up as dysregulation. Part 5, how screaming is tied to the body, not the mind. 6, why screaming is worse with you. Part 7, my best redirection strategies in the moment with screaming. Screaming is not a character trait. Let's start here. Screaming is not who your child is. It's not a personality flaw. It's not a sign that they're being dramatic, defiant, or out of control. Screaming is what happens when your child's nervous system runs out of capacity. In simple terms, screaming shows up when the feeling is bigger than their words. The urgency is stronger than their impulse control. The moment is more intense than their ability to regulate. If your child is screaming, it's not because they won't calm down, it's because they can't yet. That's the first shift. Okay, so now you're probably thinking, screaming is not a character trait, it's not who my kid is, but they are trying to manipulate me or get what they want. So this leads us to part 2. Isn't this just manipulation? Now, a lot of parents hear and think, okay, it feels like manipulation. It feels like they're screaming to get something they want. When people say manipulation, they usually mean my child is screaming on purpose to control me or get something. But true manipulation requires these things: planning, forethought, and emotional control. Toddlers don't have that yet. What is actually happening is this: your child is overwhelmed and screaming is the only tool that they have left. They're not thinking, if I scream louder, mom will cave. They're thinking, I don't know how to handle this feeling and my body is exploding. That's dysregulation, which leads us to part 3, why screaming often comes with grabbing. Now let's talk about something that you notice all the time. Screaming doesn't usually happen alone or in isolation. It comes with other things like grabbing toys, pushing, invading space, blocking other kids, hoarding toys. And that is when kids get labeled really fast. Here is a common example. You're at a play date. One child grabs a toy, another child screams. Maybe the same child is doing both. Maybe they're the one screaming and grabbing the toy from the child that was playing nicely and doing what they were supposed to do. So suddenly the narrative becomes they're stealing, they're being aggressive, they're a bully. But here's the reframe. Grabbing isn't stealing. Grabbing is control seeking. Control seeking means I feel out of control of my body. When toddlers can't regulate internally, they regulate externally. They grab objects, space, attention. Not to be mean, but to feel stable. So when screaming and grabbing show up together, what you're actually seeing is external regulation. So your child is using their body to do what their nervous system can't do yet on its own. And this is why it matters so much. You're not just correcting behavior, you're protecting your child's identity. Because when we label a child, instead of reading their nervous system, that label sticks. Which leads us to part 4, how screaming shows up as dysregulation, because we're meeting our child where they are. So let's make dysregulation more concrete. A lot of parents in my free Facebook community, Tantrum and Behavior Support for Toddlers, describe screaming like this. It comes out of nowhere. Calm talking makes it worse. Explaining just escalates it. It lasts forever. It's louder with me than with anyone else. That's dysregulation. Here's why. When your child is screaming, their brain has shifted into survival mode. The emotional part of their brain is running the show. The thinking part of the brain that understands logic, language, consequences goes offline. And that's why those strategies often don't work. We know that reasoning doesn't work. Explaining doesn't work. Saying stop screaming often makes things worse. They literally cannot access the part of the brain that would help them stop. So what can we do? I want to give you a concrete story of a parent I actually helped. And this is great to illustrate that not all screaming looks the same. I have two different examples of an underlying trigger of screaming because we don't want to treat all screaming the same. So a lot of times when we think of our toddler screaming, we think of a fight response, yelling, pushing back with you or a sibling, but sometimes screaming is actually paired with a freeze response. Different kids respond to stress differently or in different ways, and even the same child might show a fight response in one moment and a freeze response in another. And one of the most common freeze responses I see in toddlers is the toddler going completely still and screaming. Let me tell you about a moment like this. I worked with a mom who had two toddlers, a boy and a girl, and the little girl would just scream. She wasn't grabbing, she wasn't hitting, she would go completely internal, very still, and then scream. At first glance, it might look like she's going into a fight response, but it actually was a freeze response because she didn't know what to do in the situation. She felt stuck. And what was happening was her brother had a toy that she wanted, and she did not know how to ask for that. She didn't have the words yet to say, I want to turn. I want to play with that. So instead, she froze and screamed. Once I guided the mom of these two toddlers through my 5 steps to less meltdowns method, which I break down in detail in another video called What Exactly is a Toddler Tantrum, that screaming began to disappear. Why? Because now the girl had a skill. She had an action plan for next time. She learned the words. She knew what to do. The screaming wasn't attention seeking. It was skill seeking. And if you want to watch that video, you can tap the card right here or check the description below, and I will make sure to link that video. So I just gave an example of screaming where there was a communication and advocacy gap for a child. But screaming doesn't always come from the same underlying need. They have different triggers. And that is why it's so important we don't slap on basic strategies for every screaming issue. And in this next section, part 5, I'm going to talk about autonomy, an underlying need of autonomy as a reason for screaming. So we're going to talk about autonomy panic. The body says no first. Now let's talk about these moments where screaming shows up around the body, where your child wants independence and some form of control of their environment. This could be things like potty time, brushing teeth, eating, getting dressed, being held or restrained. This is what I call autonomy panic. From a brain perspective, here's what's happening. Your toddler's body senses a loss of control before their thinking brain can process it. Their nervous system fires a threat response. This is why it feels sudden and extreme. The body says no before the brain knows what to do or how to explain why. So the scream isn't defiance, it's protection. So with both examples, we can see that not all screaming is the same. If we just wait or ignore as our only strategy, then our toddler's needs aren't being met. We're not addressing the need for autonomy, and we're not addressing a communication skill gap or a self-advocacy skill gap in these situations, examples I gave. So that leads us to part 6, why screaming is worse with you. Now, if you feel like they don't scream with anybody else but me like this, and you feel like they're being disrespectful to specifically you, I want you to know that this is attachment. It's not disrespect. Your child screams when they feel safest to fall apart, and maybe they've been holding it together all day at school. Then they unload where the nervous system feels safe and most secure to do so. And that's usually you. Part 7, using redirection with screaming, my 2-second solutions. So let's talk about what to do in the moment when your toddler is screaming. Should we just wait? Should we just set a limit? Should we ignore? So as a parent of strong-willed kids, I've learned this. When your child is screaming, whether it's from overstimulation, sensory seeking, vocal play, or even a burst of frustration, and you say, stop screaming, they will usually just scream louder. Sound familiar? Not because they're being defiant, because their nervous system is already flooded. So instead of trying to shut the scream down, we shift it. Here's what I want us to do. I want us to understand our toddler's nervous system is flooded. So instead of trying to shut the scream down, we shift it. And before I give you these 2-second solution strategies, I want to say this clearly. These tools are not one size fits all. If your toddler is in the middle of a meltdown, a full nervous system that's gone offline, redirection is not what they need in that moment. What they need is co-regulation, anchoring, calm presence, a time to return to baseline, not solutions, skills, or distractions. So these redirection strategies are for moments when your child is overstimulated, seeking sensory input, testing boundaries, bored or dysregulated, but still somewhat reachable. You will know the difference because your child will have some access to curiosity, to playfulness, or to response to you, and not full-blown meltdown. So here are 4 different shifts that we can use in these instances when our toddler's brain is still somewhat online and they are not in a full-blown meltdown. So these are 4 things we can use. I call them 2-second solutions because they work quickly. They are a type of redirection. So the first one is redirect attention gently. Wow, that's a big voice. Let's whisper and see if we can hear the wind. Or we're going to listen for something quiet in the environment. So instead of saying, stop doing this, we're redirecting them to focus on making their voice like a whisper and to try to listen to something in the environment. So we're redirecting their behavior. We're not shaming the screaming. We're not shutting it down. You're giving their nervous system a new track, a new outlet. Second is model the voice you want. Let's try a whisper voice. Show me how you ask for help softly. So sometimes our toddlers will scream at us, like because they want something and they want it now. They're screaming, I want this, or give me the purple bowl, or I want goldfish now, right? And we're like, whoa, that does not need to be a scream, right? So we could just say, stop screaming, right? But if we model how we want them to ask, instead of always going to correct them directly, stop screaming. That's not how you ask me. Instead saying, I want the goldfish, please. And you model it for them to copy. Then you're redirecting them to say it in an appropriate way without giving all the attention to a negative way that you don't want them to interact with you. And you're teaching without pressure when you model. That's really great for strong-willed toddlers. Third is offer a safe outlet for the screaming. So if they do need to scream, they do need to yell. Let's just say they just need to get some things out, right? We all have been in a spot where we feel like we need to get things out. And if your toddler is like, they just need to yell, they just need to scream so they can move on, we can direct it in a more healthy outlet. Maybe there's a certain room they can go scream in. Maybe they can go scream outside, but we don't scream inside. We don't scream inside Target. We don't scream inside the library, right? There's somewhere we can go to scream. There are different regulation strategies. So you're meeting the need and you're not fighting it, and we are giving them a safe outlet. The fourth one is using a calm visual. So let's blow out birthday candles together. This works because the body calms before the brain catches up, like putting the fingers up, blowing out candles. They're getting a sensory experience from it, right? Redirection helps in the moment. Those are my 2-second solutions, and the 4 I just gave you specifically for screaming. Here's a reminder. If it's a skill gap, however, here's a reminder to use my 5 steps to less meltdowns, which I break down in another video called What Exactly is a Toddler Tantrum? So here's the truth I want to leave you with. When toddlers scream, they're not trying to embarrass you, punish you, or be a bully. They're trying to survive a feeling they don't yet know how to hold. This isn't a parenting failure. It's a skill building moment. The moment doesn't mean you're failing. It means your child is still learning, and you're the safest place to do that. So instead of reacting to the noise, you can respond to the need. That's not permissive. That's powerful because it tells your child, even when you lose control, I won't lose sight of who you are. You're not just managing behavior. You're protecting identity and building the skills your child will carry for life. Just a reminder, if this video really helps shift the way you see your child screaming or how they're interacting or grabbing toys from other children, and you felt the shift, feel free to check out my other helpful videos and subscribe to the channel. Always a like on this video will also be gratefully appreciated. Thank you so much. I'll see you in the next video.